All right, today we're going to talk about something that can literally make or break any construction project: procurement. It's that strategic game plan that has to be in place long before the first shovel ever hits the ground. And believe me, getting it right, well, it's everything. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll tackle the why. Why is procurement so fundamental to a project's success? Then we'll walk through the actual step-by-step process. After that, we'll get into the different ways you can deliver a project, cover some best practices that really work, and wrap up by looking at where all of this is headed. Okay, first up, why should you care so much about what sounds like a pretty dry administrative process? Well, because this is where the real blueprint for success, we're talking financial and structural, gets drawn up. It all starts here. This quote, it just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures how high the stakes really are. See, this isn't just about ordering some lumber and pipes. No way. This is the phase that sets the entire course for your project. And if you get it wrong, you're basically putting out fires from the moment you start. And to really get this, we've got to clear something up. People throw the words procurement and purchasing around like they're the same thing, but they're absolutely not. Purchasing, that's just the transaction, the simple act of buying something. Procurement, that's the whole shebang. It's the strategy, from figuring out what you need in the first place, to finding the right partners, all the way through to the final sign-off. So really good procurement it's like a constant juggling act. You've got these three massive things in the air at all times: cost, quality, and time. You're trying to keep costs down, but you can't sacrifice quality. And you need it all done on schedule. A really smart procurement strategy is what keeps all three of those balls in the air instead of crashing down. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The rulebook completely changes depending on who's footing the bill. If you're in the private sector, it's all about speed, efficiency, and profit, right? But switch over to the public sector and things get a lot stricter. Every single step has to be super transparent and fair, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with taxpayer money. All right, so we've nailed down why this is all so critical. So now, let's get into the how. What does this process actually look like from A to Z? There's a really great way to think about this. Procurement isn't like grabbing a coffee. It's not a quick one-off purchase. It's much more like buying a house. It's a huge deal with a bunch of different stages you have to work through one by one. And these are pretty much the 5 big steps on that journey. First, you've got to have a rock-solid design and plan. Then, you put the word out and get bids from contractors. Step 3 is picking the right team and awarding the contract. Then comes the main event, actually building the thing and getting materials delivered. And finally, you have to close out, the final walkthrough to make sure everything is exactly as it should be. Okay, let's zoom in on that planning phase for a second, because a huge decision you have to make right up front is how you're actually going to get the work done. This is your delivery method. So the 2 big ones you'll hear about most are design bid build and design build. Think of the traditional design build build as a straight line. First, you get the entire design 100% finished. Then you go out and find a contractor to build it. It keeps everything separate. Design build is totally different. It rolls the design and the construction into one single contract with one team. This gets everyone collaborating from day one and can make things move a lot faster. But, of course, it's not just those 2. You've got other tools in the toolbox for different kinds of jobs. There's CMAR, where a construction manager comes on board early and gives you a guaranteed max price. You have job order contracting, or JOC, which is awesome for organizations that have a bunch of similar, smaller jobs they need to get done. And then there's time and materials, which gives you flexibility when you're not totally sure what the final scope is going to look like. Okay, we've covered the what, the why, and the how. Now for the pro tips, the best practices that'll take your procurement from something that keeps you up at night to a smooth, reliable process. Most of the big procurement nightmares start out as tiny, totally avoidable problems. A fuzzy scope, a wild guess on a cost, a bottleneck in the approval chain. These little things can just snowball, and before you know it, your budget is blown and you're way behind schedule. So, best practice number 1, and this is a big one, get crystal clear on your scope right from the beginning. Define everything. Seriously, don't just copy and paste from an old project without checking every single line. A super detailed scope is honestly your best weapon against arguments and expensive changes later on. Next up, you've got to change your mindset. This isn't just a transaction. It's about building partnerships. Look, I get it. The lowest price is always tempting, but it's not always the best value. Finding a reliable partner who you can actually talk to and who does good work, that is absolutely worth its weight in gold, especially when things go sideways. And number 3, keep the whole bidding process transparent. When all the bidders have the exact same clear instructions and they know exactly how you're going to score their proposals, it builds trust. And that trust, it usually means you get sharper, more accurate prices because they're not trying to bake in extra money to cover for things they're unsure about. And here's the proof that this stuff really works. This isn't just theory. When you apply real expertise and these best practices, like doing a detailed review of proposals, you see real savings. We're talking an average of 6% on construction costs. Think about that. On a multi-million-dollar project, 6% is a massive amount of money. All right, to wrap things up, let's look to the future. The construction industry never stands still, and procurement is right there with it. So what's coming down the pike? Well, one of the biggest changes, for sure, is the huge push for sustainability. And this is way more than just a buzzword. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about value. It means we're not just looking at the initial price tag anymore. We're looking at the entire life of a building or a material. What's its long-term impact on the environment and on society? And here's what that actually looks like on the ground. Teams are starting to ask a whole new set of questions. Things like, what's the real cradle-to-grave impact of this material? Can we get something with recycled content? How can we make this thing as energy efficient as possible? And maybe most importantly, they're pushing their suppliers to come to the table with more sustainable options. And the other game changer? Technology, of course. Let's be honest, the days of trying to manage a massive, complex project with a bunch of clunky spreadsheets are just over. Now it's all about digital tools that automate scheduling and reporting. It means fewer mistakes, everyone can see what's happening in real time, and you can spot potential delays before they turn into full-blown crises. So that brings us to the final, critical question you have to ask yourself. Is your procurement process a strategic advantage, or is it your biggest risk? Because after all this, the one thing that's clear is that it's never neutral. It's either pushing your project forward or holding it back. And making sure it's an advantage, well, that all starts with the kind of strategies we've talked about today.